Welcome to this tutorial. I'm Mrs. Duffy and today I'm going to show you how to draw the classical two-circuit labyrinth in TinkerCAD. And here is an example. I'm going to introduce to you now how to take those sketches of a labyrinth into TinkerCAD. Before I can do that, I need to discuss a few things that we need to be aware of. So first of all, you need to decide on the size of your shape and what sort of shape it's going to be. So in this case I'm using a square for my example, and I'm going to use the measurements of 100 by 100, so 100 millimeters by 100 millimeters. So what I've also decided is the thickness of my walls are going to be 1 millimeter and the tracks are going to be 4 millimeters. And I need to know this before I actually get started. So that means visualizing it now. Imagine your square and the thickness of those lines is going to be 1 millimeter all the way around. That means that inside between those two walls on one side and the other is going to be 98 millimeters. So 100 minus 1 for one side and minus another 1 for the other side. So putting that aside now, when we add a inner shape, so that at the next wall within our shape, we need to think about then the gaps between. So we've got 1 millimeter each side for our walls, and then we're going to have a gap of 4 millimeters before the next wall, because our tracks are going to be 4 millimeters each. That means we've got 100. We start with 100. We'll take away 1. We'll take another 1 for the other side. Then we'll take away 4 for one track and 4 for the other track, which will give us an inner wall of 90. And hopefully this will make more sense now as I take you through in TinkerCAD of how to actually draw this and where I'm getting my numbers from. You can always replay this if you get stuck. I'm going to show you how to do a square labyrinth. So I'm going to use a box for this one. And I place my box in the middle here, and the height of my labyrinth walls is going to be 6 millimeters, and the size of it you need to decide on first of all the diameter of your labyrinth. So I've decided on 100 millimeters, so I'll change those measurements first. 100 millimeters and place it back in the center. Next step is need to decide on the wall width. So I've decided on a width for my walls of 1 millimeter each, and I've also decided that my tracks are going to be 4 millimeters each. So the next step is to make a copy of this, and then we're going to take away that copy. So with this object selected, come up here to duplicate and repeat, or you can use Command D or Control D on your keyboard. So I've just made a copy and it doesn't look like it has, but it has, and I'm going to make that a hole. The next thing I'm going to do is I need to first of all take away the wall width, which is on each side of this labyrinth. The walls will be 1 millimeter thick, so that's 2 millimeters I'll take away. Then I've got the track width, which we'll do in a minute. Okay, so I'm going to take away 1 millimeter each side for the walls, so that means I'll take away 2, which means 98 for this hole, 98 on each side. And then the next thing is to center that now within, because it's too hard to just line up freehand. What we do is we select both objects and we come up here and use the align button. Click on align and we line them up vertically and horizontally like that. So you can just make out there the largest cube, and we've got the hole in the middle. So now what we need to do is to subtract that and take it away. So I'm just clicked and drag my mouse down and to select both objects, and I'll come up here and I'll group them. In a moment you'll see that then I've got this outer wall for my labyrinth. I'll just click away. There we go. Now you can see it. The next step is we need to make an inner wall. So we're going to use a copy of this. So top left hand corner, duplicate and repeat, or Control D on your keyboard. So I've just made a copy and now I need to resize it. So I know I've got 1 millimeter each side. So that's 2 millimeters I'm going to take away. Then I have tracks of 4 millimeters each side. So that means another 8 millimeters. All up, I've got to take away 10 millimeters for each track. So for this one, I'm going to take a 10 away. I'm going to make the next one 90. And the other measurement 90, other wall 90, other side 90. So we've got 2. We need 3 because we're doing a 2 circuit. So we'll copy that again, and we'll make sure that this time it is 80 millimeters because we've taken away another 10 millimeters. And we've got our 3 walls. What we need to do now is to select all 3 of those, and we're going to align them. Let's use the alignment tool, top right hand corner, click on that. Center this way and center this way, and we've got them all aligned nicely. There we go. Now I'm going to zoom in. I'm going to select all of them, and then I'm going to move them up a little bit and zoom in a little bit. Right, so what we're going to do is we need to bring up our drawing, our hand sketch of our labyrinth. I'm going to start my opening around here, but first of all we need our anchor that comes from the center out to the outside. So we can be anywhere along this wall. Oops, can be anywhere along that wall, and I should have dragged them all together, which I didn't do. We don't need to group these at this stage. So to create our first anchor point, I need to create a new wall. So I'm going to use a box over here and change the dimensions on that. So we know that our walls are 6 millimeters high for a start, and our walls are 1 millimeter thick. So that's how thick they are. Now we've got to move this over into position. We want to put it over here and across there. So what we're going to do is look at it from the top, click on it, and click on our protractor and change that, make that 90 degrees, and that turns it nicely. And then move it, drag it over and line it up where you want to start your opening on this wall. And it needs to come out from the center. It's going to come in closer there. We don't want to go too far. Okay, I'm going to grab all of these and move them over here so I can see them a little bit better. Need to make sure that that actually meets up nicely, that there's no little gaps. So we can move this wall with our arrow keys on our keyboard. And if I look down to the snapping grid dimensions down here, at the moment it's set to 0.25. I'm just going to move it to 0.1 and use my arrow and just move it up a little bit. And that might just be a bit too much. So I'm going to look at it from this side. Oh, I got into a bit of bother there, so I'm going to zoom out to do this. And that looks pretty good. Okay, it is too long though. So we know we've got 1 millimeter, we've got 4 millimeters, that's 5, and another 5 is 10, and then another one that's 11. So this wall needs to be 11 millimeters long. So we'll just change that measurement to 11, and that should be perfect. Now, it's just a little bit too long, so it must be 10. Let's change that to 10. .5. So long as it doesn't go through the ends of your labyrinth, it'll be good. Yeah, because we don't want it protruding. All right, excellent. So we've got our first wall in, our anchor point. Now we want to have an opening here that will allow you to walk into your labyrinth. So we're going to draw a hole, so I'm going to use a box, and I'm going to have to zoom out. Now the track width is 4 millimeters, so track width is 4 millimeters, and the depth for walls is 1 millimeter, but I want a little bit of leeway, so I'm going to give myself 3 millimeters. And the height of our walls is 6 millimeters, but again I'm going to give myself a little bit of a leeway, so I'm going to make it 8 millimeters, and I'm going to take it below the line for a little bit, just a little bit, to give me a little bit of wiggle room, and drag it down into place. And it's good to look at it actually from the bottom, is what I found. Okay, it's lined up pretty well there, but it needs to go over a little bit more. We need to get it as close to this wall as possible without actually going into that wall. So we need to check that very carefully. This is going to take a little bit of fiddling. Okay, I need to zoom in a little bit, and you can see it's not quite matching up. So this is where it's really important to know how to use our snap grid. What I'm going to do is move it by 0.1 over a bit, and then again, until I get it perfectly lined, and it's perfectly lined up now. Nicely lined up with that edge. So now with this hole selected, I'm going to hold my shift key and then click on that particular wall, and then I'm going to group them, and that will give me my hole. It just takes a moment to render that. There we go, perfect. It's pretty good. All right, so we've got our first entrance to our labyrinth, and we need to look at our drawing again and see where we're going to go next. So once we go around to here, go all the way around, we're going to need to do a U-turn here. So we're going to need another hole here. So what I find it easy to do, if I just undo that grouping for a moment and I make a copy of this one, it just saves me a bit of time. So I'm going to click on the copy or duplicate. There we go. And before I group it again, I'm just going to move it off to the right and move it roughly into its place over there. And I'll go and group that again. Hold the shift key, hold the wall, select the wall, and then group it. Now let's focus on this one. So it's roughly in position, and then line it up against that wall but not into the wall. And let's see how we're going. It needs to be just a little bit more. So this is quite fiddly. This is not something that you can just do in 5 or 10 minutes. That actually looks pretty good. So I'll select, now look at it from the top. It's lined up that way as well. Very good. So I'll select it now, shift key, select the wall, and group. Now it really could have gone over a little bit more, so I'm going to undo that, Control Z, or use the back arrow, and I'm going to move it over again just a little bit more, 0.1 of a millimeter. I'm using the snap grid, 0.1 millimeter. And while I think of it, I'm going to copy this hole. So copy and move that away, because I'm going to need one more in a minute. Select it, hold the shift key down, select your wall, and then group. That looks a lot better. It looks perfect. All right. Next step, the final step, is to put in that opening to enter the center of your labyrinth. So we'll grab that now and we'll move it over into position. Let's zoom in on that. And sometimes it's good to look at it from the bottom. And it's not too bad, but it does need to be moved down a little bit till it meets that wall, but not go, we don't want to go into the wall. So we come out a little bit. Now let's try that and see how it looks. So hold the shift key down, select the wall, and then group them. Let's go in and make sure we haven't taken anything away from the wall, and it actually looks pretty good. Alright, now we've got our labyrinth. We want to group all of those pieces together. So we select it and group it. Now we've got one labyrinth, 1, 2 circuit labyrinth. Now there's no floor on it. So the easiest way to do this, what we could have done before we grouped everything right at the beginning, is we could have made a copy of the outer one. But then we would have to store it and then bring it back in. And it's just as easy actually to bring in a new box and give it the dimensions 100 by 100. And adjust the height of it. So this is going to be the floor. So let's make the floor of it 2 millimeters. And roughly put it over here onto the underneath our labyrinth. The next step, we select all objects. So we're going to click in the top right hand corner, drag our mouse down and then release. And we'll come up here and we will align them using the alignment tool. Then we click on the alignment handles there, and that lines it up nicely. And then if we're happy with that, we then select them all and we group them. And there you have your 2 circuit labyrinth. So that's the process, and you've got many shapes. You can do a circular labyrinth, you can do a square labyrinth, you could probably try a triangle labyrinth, a polygon labyrinth, and you've got the skills now to work your way through maybe a 3, 4, 5, or even a 7 circuit labyrinth. Because my goal at the beginning was only to do 2 circuits, I stopped when I made the 3rd wall. All you need to do is to make more copies of those walls. So let me show you a neat little trick. Let's say you want to make a 3 circuit labyrinth next. What we can do is we can copy this project. So I'm going to go back to my dashboard and I'm going to copy this project because I don't want to undo everything I've done. I want to be able to keep it and go back to it, but I need to go back to the dashboard where I'm going to duplicate this project. There's the work that I just did, and what I do is I select duplicate, and that will open it in a new tab for me. You'll see it says copy of 2 circuit labyrinth. So let's say we want to make this a 3 circuit now, so I'll just rename that and call it 3 circuit. And what I do, and this is very sneaky, is to select all of it and then ungroup them. We don't want all of those walls in there. What we'll do is we'll select that and we'll make a copy of it. So we'll copy it, and of the copy we'll make that 70 now, and then we'll make another one and we'll make that 60 and 60. Alright, and now it's a good idea to keep these ones grouped because we don't want to undo all that lovely work that we've done. And what we want to do is to remove we want to ungroup these because they've got those little holes in them at the moment. So if I unlock that, and then what I can do is I can just move that out to the side, And I want to do the same for this. I'm going to ungroup it, and then I'm going to move that one off to the side. And now I want to group all of these, well, not group them, but I want to align all of these objects to the center. There we go. Nice. So you've already got 2 more walls. That would make a 5 circuit. That's 1, 2, 3, 4 circuits. So if we want to stop at 3, we'll do it there, or we can make another one of these walls. So you can see now how we don't have to keep reinventing the wheel. We can actually use what we've started. I hope you got a lot out of that today, and I hope that you're enjoying exploring the classical labyrinth.